Thank you very much for being for the meeting on time. We have formed a quorum and it's already the appointed time. I call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. The meeting dated the 15th of May 2017. The minutes have been circulated to members. If members have no objection, the minutes are confirmed. Second item, information papers issued since the last meeting. We have a referral from the Public Complaints Office on issues relating to support measures for elderly employment. This item has been discussed in the past, and let's put it on our list of outstanding items and see whether we will discuss it in the next legislative year. The third item is adjustment of the maximum rates of medical expenses under the Employees Compensation Ordinance and the Pneumoconiosis and Mesothelioma Compensation Ordinance. The hospital authority has recently amended the fees and charges, and therefore the rates under the ordinances have to be adjusted. Please invite the administration to join us. Paper CP2 1876/1617(01). For this item, we have Ms. Mabel Lee, Deputy Commissioner for Labor. Ms. Lee, can you briefly walk us through the paper before I open the floor to members? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. The paper proposes to increase the daily maximum rates of medical expenses under the Employees Compensation Ordinance ECO and the Pneumoconiosis and Mesothelioma Compensation Ordinance PMCO. Employers are responsible for paying the medical fees of an employee injured or a prescribed occupational disease sufferer who has received treatment in respect of work injury or a prescribed occupational diseases. And we have listed out fees payable, and they include fees for consulting a medical practitioner, registered Chinese medicine practitioner, OTPT, etc. So the rates are set at such a level to cover the expenses incurred by an injured employee or a prescribed occupational disease sufferer on consultation, treatment, therapy, medicines, and hospitalization, etc., on a day in a public hospital or clinic. And the daily maximum rates are set for medical expenses respective on inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, and both received on the same day. Currently, the daily maximum rate for inpatient or outpatient treatment is both set at $200, whereas the maximum daily rate for inpatient and outpatient treatment received on the same day is set at $280. Because the fees and charges for public health care services have been adjusted, we will make corresponding adjustment to our rates. To save time, may I refer members to Annex 2. Currently, the daily maximum rate of inpatient and outpatient treatment are both $200. And we've also got the various fees and charges for maintenance fee, admission fee, PTOT, injection and dressing, etc. So we propose to increase that to $300. An inpatient and outpatient treatment received on the same day will be adjusted to $370 per day. We have consulted the Pneumoconiosis Compensation Fund Board as well as the Labor Advisory Board. Both are supportive of our proposals. We've tried to consult the Accident Insurance Association of the Hong Kong Federation of Insurers and the possible impact on the premium levels of employees' compensation insurance. The reply from AIA was because of the competition ordinance, it would be inappropriate for them to advise us on the possible impact. However, we have set out the impact in 2003 when the rates were increased from 175 or were increased to 200 and 280 respectively.
Today, if the panel will support us, the next step is to propose the amendments for approval to Legislative Council. It is a piece of subsidiary legislation for positive vetting. We urge members to support the improvements. This is my introduction. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. When do you suppose or propose to come up with the amendments? Because the fees have been adjusted already for outpatient consultations because the workers are already charged a higher fee. Chairman, you are correct. As I was saying, this is for positive vetting. Therefore, if the panel supports us today, and we will talk to the drafting division of the DOJ, but we are in July, and the legislative year will draw to a close. We will do so as soon as possible in the new legislative year. Thank you. Because of time constraint, we don't have a lot of time for this item. Every member will be given 3 minutes. 2 members have raised their hands, Poon Shiu Ping and Michael Look. Mr. Poon. Thank you, Chair. These adjustments are proposed in response to higher consultation fees at hospitals. I believe such changes are necessary. I'd like to take the opportunity to understand more because mesothelioma is such that patients or workers can hardly be cured. I'd like to ask whether you have considered the high medical expenses. What is the difference between the fees charged at public and private hospitals? Secondly, how many mesothelioma cases are there now? And also, workers with this disease should be compensated under the PCO. And is it that they have to go through a test of lung function before the compensation can be calculated? And if they can't take the test, then they will be deprived of the compensation. Deputy Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Poon, for your questions. You mentioned the figure, and I can give you the figure. Let me quote the 2016 figure. There were 7 confirmed mesothelioma cases. In 2015, there were 13. Mr. Poon asked about the drug costs. Is it expensive, and what is the difference between public and private medical costs? Indeed, prices vary. Within the private sector, there is no standard fee charged. But for public hospitals, you can see a list of the relevant fees in the paper. Of course, we cannot say for sure how much is charged in the private sector, but we know that sometimes the mesothelioma mesothelioma patients may need a special drug for chemical treatment. In the public sector, if a specialist doctor of the hospital authority authorizes the prescription of the drug, then the standard fee would have been included already in the public system charges. And by raising the maximum amount this time around, we can already take care of the actual medical expenses for such patients. Mr. Michael Look. Thank you, Chairman. The existing PCO was formulated in 1953. There were subsequent amendments. However, there are still inadequacies. I'd like to ask whether you have any plan to review the ECO and to take care of sudden death, heat stroke, or musculoskeletal pain, and to include them for compensation. Have you done the review? If yes, what is the progress? Secondly, you are raising the daily maximum rates for hospitalization and outpatient consultation. And of course, you know that if you use this amount to seek private advice, it will not be enough at all. And it will not be enough for OT or physiotherapy. Very often, workers rely on the service of the hospital authority. But specialist care, including PT and OT, patients have to wait a long time for such service. The Labor Department should set up a dedicated clinic to take care of injured workers, so they have a fast track for receiving medical attention. Very often there is a golden period for treatment and rehabilitation. If patients wait too long at government clinics, the effectiveness of the treatment will be very much lessened. Deputy Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Look, for questions and remarks. First, review of ECO. We review labor laws from time to time to see whether there need to be improvements or adjustments. Let us look at these two ordinances under discussion. There have been previous adjustments, and every 2 years we adjust the compensation amounts. We'll continue to work hard in this respect and keep the ordinances under review. Mr. Luke mentioned sudden death, death from exhaustion. We understand the members' concern, but the compensation items that should be included in the law, say for example sudden death or death from exhaustion, that is very complicated. I think we answered questions at council meetings. We'll consider researching into it to gather actual figures to see how we can improve the situation. Next, Mr. Fernando Zhang. Thank you, Chair. The HA has raised its fees, so there are adjustments. But actually, pneumoconiosis and mesothelioma patients need medical care that far exceeds what is provided here. They need some breathalyzers or NIV, positive air pressure sleep breathalyzers. These are not included at present. When they seek expert advice at public clinics, it takes a long time to wait, and so sometimes they go to the private sector for outpatient service, and that will not be covered by this at all. 280 is definitely not enough. Let's ask the administration whether you would help patients with medical devices and other forms of treatment. What kind of resources within these funds can be used to subsidize their treatment? Deputy Commissioner, these are just entry grade kind of help. What about other treatment? Can you help? Chairman, thank you. Dr. Zhang, for your question. The medical devices. We understand Dr. Zhang's remark. Some deputations have reflected the view to us together with Dr. Zhang. Indeed, there are 3 categories of medical devices. And the breathalyzer, for example, is not a designated medical device. And the fund board will not cover it. We understand relevant organizations have reflected the view to the Pneumoconiosis Compensation Board. The fund board is looking into the issue. The LD is also looking into the issue to see what medical devices are required by the patients so we can amend the law. Can you give us a timetable? How much more time do you need for looking into this? Chairman, thank you for your question. We are working as fast as possible, but since you want to write something into the law, the writing should be done with a lot of care. Give us a timetable. Please do not thank me for my question. Give me a timetable. We will do as soon as possible. As soon as possible is not a timetable. When you say as soon as possible, I want you to mean today. Apart from the timeline, is it that you have already confirmed that you would probably include these medical devices? Because if you don't have a work direction, even if you have a timetable, it doesn't help. So are you going to include these medical devices? And also, for mesothelioma patients, they need to receive chemical radiation injections, and one would cost $20,000. So are you going to also write this into the law? Deputy Commissioner, we need to do our study and to confirm that the medical devices are appropriate and necessary first. This is proposed by doctors. Why do you still want to research into it? And this is not a new issue. It has been proposed many years ago. So why are you still reviewing the situation? What are you looking into? Some deputations gave us examples. Say, breathalyzer. Now, which type, which category? Well, you just act according to the doctor's judgments. You mean the LD will look into which type of breathalyzer would be appropriate? I don't think the LD should be doing this. Let me supplement. As I said, we need to look into this together with the PCFB. Dr. Zhang, why don't we do this? This is our last meeting for the year. We will meet only after the summer recess. Can you not give us a report after the summer recess? We will try our very best. No, the reply must be substantial and concrete, both in terms of content and the timeline. The clerk will keep you in contact. Including medical devices and treatment. Deputy Commissioner, yes, we will try our very best. Any other questions? If not, since this is for legislative amendment. I'd like to ask members whether you support the adjustments in the paper. Well, of course, Chairman. There is no way we won't support it. Well, we'll support it in principle, but as Dr. Fernando Zhang and other members have said, this paper does not go far enough. We want you to expand the scope of compensation, and you should let us know the results as soon as possible. Okay, thank you. We support the paper. Thank you. Next, occupational disease and occupational health situation in 2016. We have Deputy Commissioner for Labour, Occupational Safety and Health, Mr. Jeff Leung. He will walk us through the paper. Paper CB bracket 2, 1856. Mr. Leung, can you please walk us through the paper? Thank you, Chairman, members. I understand we don't have a lot of time for this agenda item, and I will keep my introduction short. We are here to report to members the occupational disease and occupational health situation in 2016. Altogether, there were 334 confirmed cases in 2016. Like before, the common occupational diseases included occupational deafness, tensile of the hand or forearm, and silicosis. As for the situation about these three diseases, they are in the paper. Allow me just to mention that in this last half year, since we have come to know the situation of long hours of standing at work, we have done some in-depth promotional and publicity work. In the first stage, we targeted chain stores in the catering and retailing industries where there are a big number of workers, and we have liaised with the management of these organizations to hopefully ask them to do something by way of the system to take care of workers in their organizations who need to stand for long hours. We are still working on this, and after 6 months, we can see that the employers have responded positively. In some organizations, there have not been the stipulation or a policy for a break after workers have stood for long hours. Now they are quite willing to put in such a policy. And also, if it is appropriate and if indeed workers have to stand long hours, some employers have been positive about providing chairs. The Labour Department will continue to work on this. The rest of the information is in the paper. Let me stop here and let members ask us questions. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. The floor is open now. 3 minutes each. Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chairman. If I may go to the annex. In 2016, there were 334 cases. It was 198 in 2013. Now it has climbed to 334. There is the tensile synovitis of the hand or forearm, 63 cases. Just now, the Deputy Commissioner talked about standing for long hours. I have always said that fatigue and injury to the lower limb should be included as an occupational disease, but you were unwilling. You said you were talking to employers who should allow their workers to have a break of 15 minutes every 3 hours. This is in para 13 because prolonged standing can cause muscle ache and fatigue, and in the long run, it can even lead to various diseases due to continuous pressure in the legs. I'd like to ask you, at the OSH clinics, how many cases were there from workers who have suffered because of prolonged standing at work? Do you have a figure? And then in para 12, you talk about heat stroke prevention. We welcome the LD's inspection at construction sites. From 2013, you have issued updated guidelines recommending the industry to give an extra 15-minute rest break every morning. And you said that during inspections, you will ascertain whether contractors follow the guidelines to provide extra rest breaks for workers.
So in 2016, how many inspections have you made? And were there any sites that did not follow guidelines and hence were warned by you? Deputy Commissioner. Well, members were asking in 2016 on the inspections for heat stroke cases. Well, because summer just began now in 2017. Yes, in 2016, on the sites with a high risk of heat stroke, like construction sites or landscaping sites, for these high-risk areas, we carry out more than 28,400 inspections. And among them, we did issue warnings, even took follow-up enforcement actions. I don't have the breakdown. I can provide you with the data after the meeting. Okay. How about prolonged standing cases? Well, we occasionally at our clinics saw workers with strain in their lower limbs. On each individual case, we would find out about their work conditions, their daily habits, their health conditions, to see whether the lower limb condition of a worker was related to the work. But I don't have the figures now on how many cases were related to work conditions, and if so, to what degree the problem was caused by work. But I don't have a breakdown now, but I can provide you with the figures afterwards. Okay, DC, I find it strange that there are two figures. One is about occupational deafness. The number is quite high, 334, and there's also with silicosis, 43 cases. Traditionally, well, in the past, I thought only people in traditional industries would be exposed to such diseases, but now it seems like their numbers have gone up. So first of all, what kinds of work led to professional deafness, resulting in so many cases? And also, for silicosis, what caused that? Can we avoid these two diseases so that we won't have as high a number in the future of these cases? Okay, in replying to your question, let me explain a bit. For occupational deafness, well, it has quite a long incubation period, which could last indeed a decade for the incubation period. So people or workers with hearing problems, they can choose when they want to apply for compensation and also inform the Labor Department. So the changes in figures, when you look at them, we need to be aware of the long period involved, because they may not reflect the work condition exactly a year ago. And also, Mr. Leung, you just asked what types of work are more likely to cause occupational deafness. The main reason for it is being exposed to high noise level work environment. For example, near turbines, engines, and so forth, like people working near an aircraft engine, that could have a bigger risk of causing damage to hearing capability. Our understanding is that so far this year, while the number has increased, it's mainly due to two applications, as I said, these two applications came from jobs in high noise level working environment. And the number of workers are quite high in those two applications, and therefore we sent our staff to the sites. Actually, in one case, it was at the airport, and we did take follow-up action and urged the people in charge to ensure that the staff have ear protective gear. And we did find that when we went to the site, we found that the staff there were wearing earmuffs, but because of the long incubation period, so it could be that the workers had already been exposed to high noise level environment. No matter what, the Labor Department is aware of the cases, and it did take follow-up action at the sites. Okay, DC. Even though it could be that the workers had not protected their hearing capability, therefore they ended up having the disease, but they must have had tests regularly throughout the period, right? And the high noise level environment, did you always carry out checks at the sites? Because prevention is always better than cure. Have you done that? Have you done the inspections? Thank you, Chairman. We did carry out inspections. Occupational deafness is a disease that we're very concerned about, because for this illness, it cannot be recovered. Once you've lost your hearing ability, is lost forever. Therefore, our colleagues would, at these high-risk sites, carry out more inspections. Okay, next member is Xiu Ka-chun, followed by Luk Chun-hong. Thank you, Chairman. On the occupational disease and occupational health situation in 2016, we've got several pages in the paper, and the paper covers occupational deafness, silicosis, and so forth. But I want to find out more about occupational diseases. I think they should be related to mental health. So why is it that mental health is not covered by occupational diseases? There are psychiatrists who said that work can actually be a catalyst for mental or emotional diseases. Social workers, teachers could have the occupational disease of mental diseases, and teachers and social workers tend to seek most help, and some teachers even have depression or compulsive disorder. Same for the social workers because of their work. In 2009, well, many years ago indeed, the Social Work Department of Baptist University and the Social Workers General Union carried out a test on mental health and pressure for social workers. More than 8% of the respondents said they had disorder, and 15% had depression. So I'd like you to really pay attention to physical occupational diseases. Mental diseases should also be our concern. The WHO said, no health without mental health. And this is covered. This is the first sentence in the mental health review published by the Hong Kong government, so please pay attention to that. And also in the paper, it talks about occupational health clinics. You may have noted a case, Mr. Chan Ikera. He, on his right hand and left shoulder, back shoulder, had major pain, and he went to the clinic. He went to the occupational health clinic for treatment. The doctor used 30 seconds to inspect his back, shoulder, and elbow, and his diagnosis was that he did not have occupational diseases. So Mr. Chen argued with the doctor. In the end, the doctor just dismissed him. So some labor groups criticized that the current clinics fail in doing prevention, proper diagnosis, and treatment. And the paper said that you would ensure members that you will closely monitor the usage of occupational health clinics, and when necessary, you would make appropriate adjustments. So how can you closely monitor the clinics? How frequent would you monitor them, and what do you expect to find during your inspection. Okay, 2 questions, one on mental health and the other on clinics. Okay, let me answer a question on mental health. Labor Department, while being concerned about workers' health, would not definitely just look at occupational diseases covered by law. Even for those diseases not covered by law, we will try to do what we can to improve the workers' condition, including their health. We've issued a lot of leaflets, organized talks for the public and workers, and recently with the Occupational Health Council and the Department of Health, we organized initiatives. We did take initiatives collectively, allowing companies to join and to let their staff know about how to relax and also help them understand more about emotional diseases. Why is it that emotional diseases are not prescribed as occupational diseases? Because under the ILO, there's a clear guideline on what constitutes an occupational disease. The main point of the guideline is that the disease must be closely related to the working environment, and the disease should be one caused by the working environment. But in Hong Kong, the living environment, adds to people's pressure. So it's really difficult to define, whether someone had the diseases because of work alone, and whether the employer should shoulder all the responsibility. I think this is something that we need to consider carefully. We know that around the world so far, there aren't any countries which prescribe emotional diseases as occupational diseases worthy of getting compensation from employers. As for how do we assess our monitoring of the clinics or the effectiveness, I'm not going to discuss individual events, but based on figures, we can see that every year, thousands. Our occupational health clinics actually diagnose thousands of cases each year, and our doctors gave advice to the patients. In our clinics, our staff organized their talks on occupational health, and also there are courses offered to workers to help them know more about occupational health. Every year, we look at the waiting time, whether workers, when they are seeking consultation at clinics, that they given the slots they need. We'll take note of that. In terms of publicity, we also look at every year for the courses we offer. We review what the topics are and the turnout. And then we'll make appropriate adjustments and decide on the right topics to meet workers' needs. Thank you. Since the department is so proactive and that you're concerned about mental health, then how about workers and social workers and teachers? Would you have any figures on their mental health? I don't have the figures with me. Can you provide them to us after the meeting? Yeah, we'll try to see the Labor Department or any organizations can provide the figures. Okay, because of time, just then Shiu Chen wanted to ask about the center. Can you do a review on them? Yeah, just now I heard from Mr. Shiu about the case. It seemed like in that case, the way the doctor treated the patient had room for improvement. I'm not going to comment on the individual case, but if you have any specific advice for the operation of our clinics or areas that you think the clinics are not operating properly, I think some civic organizations have given information to you. You should do a review. Maybe you can try review the clinics. Now that I have a clinic for you and you say you don't want to comment, but we will definitely follow up on each individual case. We're not talking about just one individual case, but we're just wondering whether the clinics can really achieve the function of diagnosing and giving treatment and giving the proper assessment and prevention. I think the clinics are fraught with problems. I don't want figures. We expect you to have a review because many civic organizations and individual workers have complained a lot about the services at clinics. It's meaningless if you just give us figures because figures cannot reflect much. So can you have a serious review of the effectiveness of the clinics, how effective they are in treating the patients, and make improvements if needed? As I said, we will from time to time review, look at the waiting time, the outcome of consultations, and we also have publicity and education, and we'll see how effective our work has been, and then we'll make adjustments if necessary. I think Chairman was asking you whether you will do an overall review. I know you do have your standard for value for money, but as an exercise, would you carry out a review, and when was the last time you had the review? I think because of time, Mr. Xu, maybe at the next logical time we can have a topic on the review next time. Specifically. Okay, next one, Mr. Luk Chung Hong. Right now, there are 2 occupational health clinics, one in Kuntong and the other in Fanling. I'd like to ask about what I know each provides consultation for more than 10,000 people, but how about other districts? There are patients, in other districts, or occupational diseases or injuries. Then for people living elsewhere, it's really convenient for them to go all the way to those 2 clinics. So would the government actively consider increasing the number of occupational health clinics? And my second question is, well, this has been said for many years. The government, including the Occupational Health Council, often carries out publicity on prevention of heat stroke, but heat strokes are not protected by the Employment Ordinance. I think this is really conflicting. How come after so many years the government has not provided protection for heat stroke cases? So let me urge the administration again. It's so hot now, now if you're under the sun for a few minutes, you sweat a lot. So you can imagine people working in hot areas like kitchen, construction sites, they are really prone to having heat strokes and their life could be endangered. So why is it that throughout so many years, despite our request for a review, heat stroke cases and heat stroke is not covered by the Employment Ordinance? And thirdly, in dealing with occupational injuries, the public really does not have enough knowledge about them. It's because of lack of government education and publicity. And many workers, to avoid inconvenience, they would not report to the authorities even if they have suffered injuries. And that allows the employers to get away with their responsibility. So the government's publicity work, how is it doing now? Can you tell us the indicators you use to assess public knowledge of Employment Ordinance? How many people really know how they should deal with or make claims for compensation for occupational injuries? And what sort of information, what channels do people have to find out about the information? Yes. 3 questions. 1 on the number of clinics. Secondly, protection for heat stroke. And thirdly, public information and awareness. Okay, for the third one, I'll ask Mr. Mack to supplement. For the first 2 questions, as for the clinics, whether we can increase their number, we have often monitored the usage of the clinics. In opening a new clinic, we need to consider about whether there will be adequate usage at the new facility. So far, we know that the waiting time is about 1 to 2 weeks. So we feel that that is an appropriate period. As for the location, so far, the existing clinics are in an area accessible by public transportation. So we feel that so far, we'll continue to monitor the situation, but we don't think there's a need to open the 3rd clinic yet. As for heat stroke cases, under the Employment Compensation Ordinance, for accidents caused by heat stroke, the employers would need to shoulder the responsibility. Same as accidents in elsewhere. If you want to prescribe heat stroke as an occupational disease, as I just explained, to be seen as an occupational disease, there are conditions to be met. So I think heat stroke may not be eligible. In other places, other countries around the world, we haven't seen provision, the same provision. So Mr. Matt can answer the third question. The Labor Department, in its publicity on occupational injury, is done a lot. We use TV, APIs, and also we take out advertisements on bus stations, display panels, and we've also published booklets, publications distributed online and also at our distribution centers to let the public know about occupational diseases and protection. And for them, we also organize seminars to explain to the public the Employees Compensation Ordinance. We also have worked closely with relevant bodies.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Tommy Zhang. I tend to look at things differently from members. I rarely see an employer who doesn't recognize an occupational disease when he has one. What I observe is to the contrary. People claim for occupational or injury at work even though it isn't such a case. You're concerned about a prolonged standing on the part of employees. I don't believe we are so short of workers to the extent that our employees cannot take a short break and sit for a while to rest their legs. And I don't see our restaurants being so busy that some workers have to be on their feet for 8 hours a day. Of course, I don't rule some exceptions. You talk about the health impact on people's feet if they have to be standing for a prolonged period of time. Have you looked at the statistics for the catering industry? In the past, well, a few decades ago, there might be workers who've been working in this sector. And have you compared the number of workers under such pressure in 2 decades ago and now? And will they be mainly serving in the kitchen or in the dining hall? And if for people who use petroleum or natural gas, or if they use some kind of stove that may cause varicose veins, and I don't think it is a very rare condition for chefs. Well, in larger restaurants and the kitchens, the chef may have to operate a big woks, Chinese woks, and they have to stand for a few hours a day, and that was a common condition. We were quite worried back then. Do you have statistics on the common occupational diseases found among the catering and retail industries? Do you have statistics for fatigue of the lower limbs when it comes to compensation? Now, you may be worried about varicose veins. It is not an occupational disease. We only have statistics held by the occupational health clinics of LD, but some workers may consult private clinics and other clinics. So we do have statistics, but that is that's only from patients we have at our OH clinics. Even though they have problems with their lower limbs that may not be directly related to their employment. We also take note of the habits and family history and whether there were previous pregnancies. All these would have an impact on the condition of lower limbs. And we have a breakdown of their occupations. Some may have nothing to do with their occupation. For some of them, the conditions might have been aggravated because of their work, and some found to be totally unrelated. We have some statistics, but that is not the whole picture. I do understand that We want to convince employers and also management to allow employees to rest their feet for a while, their legs for a while, not to ask them to be on their feet for a prolonged period of time. I don't think employers will have difficulty with that. But according to your paper, there should be 15 minutes of break after 3 hours. When we worked overseas, even though we're not on our feet, we had a short break of 15 minutes after 3 hours to take a cup of coffee, for instance. So if you want to convince employers to do this for the sake of occupational safety or health, I think you should start compiling statistics. If they're not available in Hong Kong, you should at least see whether they are available overseas to be more convincing. So do you have such statistics? Well, I explained to you our situation locally, and for overseas statistics, I agree with Mr. Tommy Zheng, and will follow up to see whether such statistics are available. Thank you. We end the discussion of this item, and we move on to the next, and it is occupational safety and health at work in confined spaces. For this item, we have the Commissioner for Labor, Mr. Carlson Chen, paper CB2 1891/161701. The reason why we have this agenda item is because on the 11th of January in Hong Kong, there was an industrial accident which claimed 3 lives when they were working on underground cables in Hong Kong. They lost their life because of the burst of some sewers. So, well, even one casualty is one too many, and in this industrial accident, 3 lives were lost. So we are very sorry, and we also like to see how such unfortunate events can be prevented in the future. And to the families of these 3 workers, we like to send them our deepest condolences, and we don't want to see a repetition of such an incident, because even one is one too many. So we would like to discuss with the Labor Department to see whether there are loopholes, and if so, whether they can be plugged, and see whether enforcement can be strengthened to prevent such accidents from happening again. So I would like to take this opportunity to take stock of the relevant legislation on working in confined spaces. Commissioner, please. Thank you, Chairman. The Labor Department shared the concern of members in relation to an industrial accident that happened on the 10th of July when 3 workers were carrying out work related to hand duct tunneling. They were killed, and we're very much saddened, and would like to send our deepest condolences to the victims' families. We have checked or inspected the site, and we have issued a suspension order to the site. We are carrying out the investigation at full steam, hoping to identify the causes of the incident. If we discover any contravention of the related legislation, we will take enforcement action accordingly. And we have used our email network to all related stakeholders to explain to them to give them an account of the incident, and to remind them of the necessary precautions to prevent a similar event from happening. Working in confined spaces does pose hazards to workers. We are always very concerned about the occupational safety and health of workers that work in confined spaces. Through inspection, education, and publicity, we work to enhance the protection for workers. For the details, please refer to para 4 to 13. After the incident, the LD immediately had a meeting with the project proponents, i.e. the CLP, and also other possible project proponents, including government departments such as the DSD and also public utilities companies, town gas, so on and so forth. We also had meetings with major contractors engaged in tunneling works to remind them to take appropriate safety measures to prevent recurrence of similar accidents. We also required all contractors engaged in hand-dug tunneling works to conduct risk assessments of the construction sites they have, and we will inspect all related work sites in the near future to ensure the safety of workers. There are about 10 such hand-dug tunneling works in progress. Hand-dug tunneling is not really a common work procedure in the construction sector, and the sector has confirmed that when tunneling is needed, the first method they would consider is open cut procedure. That is, they have excavation, a grade instead of a hand digging. This methodology is safer and also less costly, but in some circumstances that may not be possible. For instance, if the whole road surface has to be dug up, there may be traffic considerations and also a possible nuisance to residents nearby. And if open cut methodology is not possible, then they would resort to this mechanical way of doing it. And then underground, a tunnel will be dug. Using a mechanical way will be safer because workers then don't have to carry out all the work procedures underground. But of course, workers may have to need to go into the tunnel to clear the soil and debris. But compared with hand-dug tunneling, the risks are relatively lower. And there is already a prefabricated tunnel underground for protection of grouting, and this may help to prevent collapse of soil nearby and the burst of sewers. And so this is a relatively safer procedure. Why is it that under some circumstances hand-dug tunneling is still needed? Because if machine is used, there might be geological constraints. For instance, if the bend is very sharp, then perhaps a machine cannot be used. And if the bedrock is very rocky, then a machine has to be placed, and it will take up a lot of street space. In some streets, because of the soil conditions, a mechanical way may not be possible, and then tunneling has to be done by hand digging. Last week we had a few meetings with associated engineering companies, And the consensus is because hand digging is more risky. If there are alternatives, they should be considered as far as possible. Hand dug tunneling should only be chosen if other alternatives are infeasible, and even if this is used, there must be prior risk assessments with all the safety precautions taken. Because of our discussions with the contractors, we are going to issue a guideline on hand dug tunneling as soon as possible, so that only under very exceptional circumstances can hand dug tunneling be used. The guidelines will require all stakeholders to take very stringent safety measures. We hope to complete the formulation of the guidelines ASAP for implementation within this year. Thank you. I think this subject is very close to our heart, so I will allow members a longer speaking time, 4 minutes each. Dr. Kwokaki, Mr. Jeremy Tam, and then Mr. Pun Xiuping. Well, Dr. Kwokaki, well, we always look at it with hindsight. I think long ago we knew that it was dangerous, but the Labor Department couldn't care less. Of course, the commissioner will only stay in post for a couple of years, and then they will be posted out whenever there was an incident. They would apologize and review the legislation, and then after a while they will be posted out. For these 3 lives, they are really victims. 138 out of 300 inspections were found to be problematic. So this is quite problematic. 600 odd inspections, and close to 20% of the cases were found to be problematic. So you can see how dangerous it is. For the guidelines, it is hard for you to get a conviction. They can use the reasonable excuse defense. So you can only blame it on the 3 lives lost. You can say that they've been reminded to take safety precautions. They just ignored it, so they only had themselves to blame. Is that the case? So even though you ask them to investigate, it is a waste of time, because even after investigation, nobody will be penalized. You talked about strict requirements. How come you haven't done so earlier for hand dug tunneling? Chairman, you know whether it be the groups for rights of injured patients and other concerned groups, they've already said that the Labor Department will only take action after lives are lost. So they have to employ a competent person to do the assessment. The competent person is employed by the contractor. Who is the employer? The employer is Kem Shing, the case in question. So do you expect the contractor to employ someone to say that it is not possible? Do you know that in other jurisdictions, for all confined spaces, they first have to apply for approval, and the competent person must not be employed by a contractor. It has to be either from the Labor Department or someone independent of the government. You know, the government is so lazy. They spend money on white elephant projects instead of monitoring or enforcement. So works can only start after the risk assessment is satisfactory. Now the contractor is allowed to say that it's okay to start works, and then afterwards they couldn't care less, and you were so angry with the remarks made by the contractor in this case. Mr. Chen, I don't know when you will be promoted or transferred, but before you do so, please ensure that for all works in confined spaces, there must be approval from a labor or safety officer first before works can start, because you don't know how long the works will take. So when works are still in progress, at least there should be weekly checks, because these are the most high-risk works, whether it be leakage of dangerous gas or water or electricity. The consequence can be fatal. So, Commissioner, can you tell us when you're going to do this? As I said, together with the sector and government departments and all relevant contractors, we have had a few meetings.
則上同意個方向啦。
In principle, we have agreed to the direction of not using hand duct tunneling methods as much as possible. That has been agreed. We also know that compared to machine digging or open trench digging, hand duct tunneling is more risky. We will issue a new guideline which will state even more clearly than the present one that if there is no choice, a contractor has to conduct hand duct tunneling work, he should do risk assessment and other OSH prevention. If the LD is to do this, actually here in the LegCo we have discussed OSH a few times, and our view is that the LD definitely has a different kind of work from contractors or the site in charge. We are the regulator, we are the law enforcer, and we also do publicity and promotion. Just like other OSH measures and any other trades in the industry, the duty to do risk assessment and to ensure that the work methodology is safe, the contractor has to provide all the relevant devices and measures adequately to workers. The responsibility lies squarely on the contractor. Can we step up inspection? As I said, in the coming week, we will inspect all sites which are the subject of similar works. Of course, I have to deploy resources accordingly. You know that starting from this year, the LD has mounted special operations to task high-risk operations, including working at height and also work at construction sites. Given our manpower level now, we already are working against a tight supply. Whether we can have more resources for watching over tunneling works, certainly we can consider that. Chairman, the accident rate is 20%. If you only rely on contractors, and if contractors are reliable, the workers will not have died. I already showed you a way out. I say, can you have an independent, competent person to do it? Contractors will not say that the procedures are not safe enough and so they will not start the works. No one would do that. Well, in principle, there should be a competent person to assess the risk. Why has there been this accident? This is the core of the issue. The assessment has been done and yet the accident took place. So does it mean that the present procedure is inadequate? This is what Mr. K.K. Kwok is saying. Have you targeted this situation and proposed improvements? Can we prosecute someone who does the inspections? I think this is the core of the issue. The law already stipulates that there should be a competent person carrying out a risk assessment first, and yet there is this accident. Why? What is the remedy? How can we prevent it? Chairman, we are still investigating into the cause of this accident. Initially, we have talked to companies involved in such works, and we know that the DSD and the WSD are also experienced in laying such pipes. Now, we have talked to them. We are investigating into the cause of this accident, but well, we cannot divulge the details now. We do need to look into the cause of this accident. Why is it that 3 workers died? There was flooding. Why was there an eruption of water? Is it that a nearby pipe was damaged because of the tunneling work? In the course of our investigation, we have found trace amounts of toxic gases, but the concentration level is rather low. But maybe it has dissipated. All these possible causes are looked into. As the site person in charge, and I'm not only talking about tunneling works, it's just like last time we discussed the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge accident. It involved different kinds of works which involve different degrees of risks. If we do not place the responsibility on the contractor or the person in charge at the site, and if government departments have to appoint somebody to do risk assessment for every trade, every works procedure, well, there are so many works projects in Hong Kong which involve different degrees of risks. Well, I don't think we can do it, and I can't see any other country doing this either, that is to have a law enforcer do the risk assessment. As to how we can make risk assessment more comprehensive, well, the new guideline to be issued is exactly to achieve that target. Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chair. 3 workers were killed in this accident. We are very sad. The CLP is a major enterprise. It had a rather high industrial safety parameter. And there was another worker that died in a CLP project, so altogether 4 deaths. The CLP undertakes a lot of different projects. How can the LD do something to make sure that CLP works are safe? It was reported that there was methane gas, that there was not enough risk assessment, and that the workers did not wear safety belts. But no matter what, I hope you will take targeted measures at such accidents. Number 2, the regulation for confined spaces are to be complied with by employers and contractors, and if they break it, they would be fined for $200,000 and imprisoned for 1 year. In Para 7, you say there were 31 prosecutions between 2014 and 2017, but it was said that the average fine was around $10,000 only. I hope you will review whether the penalty is too low and whether it should be raised. Do you have information about the 31 prosecutions? What are the penalties for these cases? The Commissioner said you will do your investigation as fast as possible. We hope you will find out the causes and assign legal liability. When do you expect the investigation to complete? Also, the hand duct tunneling works. In fact, 20 years ago, you already banned hand duct caisson work. You were explaining that there might still be technical difficulties, and you are going to issue a so-called targeted guideline ASAP. My question is, why don't you ban it by legislation? And why do you only issue a guideline? You say there will be legal liability, but it would be much better if you legislate to ban it altogether. And then the contractors would have to make use of machinery to take care of the technical issues. Thank you. Okay. 3 questions. Penalties, investigation timetable, and banning hand duct tunneling, plus specific measures to make CLP works safer. Okay, 4 questions. Thank you, Chairman. I'm Mr. Poon. About CLP. CLP is a sizable company. Its OSH record is not bad at all, but it's just this year that there were 4 deaths. We are very concerned. Just yesterday, the SLW and myself had a meeting with high management of CLP to register our concern about this Hong Kong accident, and we discussed how we could help the bereaved families and also how we can step up monitoring of similar projects by government and CLP. The CLP would, of course, commission a contractor for such works, but the company itself should also inspect the works. During the meeting, the CLP gave very positive responses, and it promised that it would do its best to help the bereaved families, and they proposed how they would step up monitoring of these projects in future. It also agreed totally our proposed direction, and that is, except in very exceptional circumstances where technically machinery cannot be used or open trench digging cannot be done, CLP will not resort to hand duct tunneling anymore. As to why we don't ban it altogether, as I explained, in principle, we do not advocate such methodology. This is agreed by the industry, and we are talking about proponents and contractors alike. But if there is a sharp bend, if the machine cannot take a turn, then probably still manual work will be required. And take this accident as an example. We understand that they are digging a tunnel of 90 meters, but it may have to steer clear of existing underground utilities. It is not a straight line, and when I talk to the industry, one feasible way may be that if indeed the tunnel is going to be straight, then machines should be used, and only at bends should they resort to manual work. So there will not be the necessity of hand digging the entire tunnel. When we write the new guideline, we'll talk to the industry whether this is feasible. And the objective is very clear, and that is to reduce the necessity for workers to dig tunnels deep into the ground. As for the progress of investigation, we are going at full steam. We interviewed the companies involved, and works are suspended. And then there is still a lot of water in the tunnel. We'll have to pump out all the water before we can go inside to investigate the causes of the incident. We have talked to the relevant units, and we have to see how we can divert the water in a safe manner, because there might be earth slides if we pump out all the water at one go. And at the same time, government departments will work in parallel with us. The DSD, for example, is looking into water pipes and sewers in the vicinity of the site to see whether there might be bursts. We would like to complete the investigation ASAP, and under the OSHC ordinance, if we want to take out prosecution, we need to do so within 6 months of the accident date. Therefore, no matter what the difficulties are, we must investigate within 6 months and write a report. And if we want to assign legal liability, we have to take out prosecution within 6 months. As for penalties, as I told members, we have started discussion with the DOJ to see how the penalties can have a greater deterrent effect. We have some initial thinking now, but the thoughts are still half-baked. We need to discuss further with DOJ. We will again work as fast as possible, and hopefully within the year we can make a proposal to LegCo and the stakeholders for legislative amendment. The objective is clear. We think that the present penalty, especially the penalties meted out by the court, in the past few years the penalties have been heightened, but if I remember correctly, the average fine is just like $20,000. We agree that it is not anywhere near an effective deterrent. So how can we amend the law so that the penalties meted out by the court should be a good enough deterrent? We might need to think more about this instead of just increasing the fine from 500,000 to $1 million. We are thinking of other ways to increase the deterrent effect. Again, we are working at full steam at this. I hope I have answered all the questions. Because of time constraint, we go to the next member, Jeremy Tam, and then Ms. Ann Chang. Ann Chang is not here, then Fernando Zhang. Jeremy Tam. Thank you, Chairman. First question. Before works start, do they have to apply before they can undergo hand duct tunneling? Well, if it is a road project, application has to be made to the Highways Department, the Transport Department. No, I'm talking about the Labor Department. Do they have to apply to you? Under the present code of practice, the contractor has to comply with OSH requirements, including risk assessment, and to ensure that there is sufficient equipment and measures for workers to work safely. No, I mean, do they have to make an application? No, there is no application mechanism. No application to the Labor Department. How would you know then where hand duct tunneling is being done? How do you know? Since no application has to be made to you, according to OSH ordinance, whether or not it is at grade, if it exceeds a certain time period, and if the number of people exceed a certain number, then they need to notify the LD. We believe such works are usually long in duration, so they would have to notify us. What about this particular accident that took place on the 10th of July? Were you notified? We'll have to check our records. I believe they have notified us, because experience tells us that notification has to be given us. Does it mean when you have the notification you will make an inspection at all the works? Chairman, Mr. Tam, I can say for sure that whenever we receive notifications, our staff will go and make an inspection. In other words, at this site where the accident took place, did you do any inspection?
我哋根據個記錄咧，我哋係
According to our record, we did not do any inspection before the accident took place. Why not? We need to go back and check to see whether any notification has been given us, because it might be possible that if it is a term contract, I don't know the Chinese, it might have notified us about a bigger region where works would be undertaken. As to where exactly the procedures will take place, we will do an inspection when we know about it.
So just then they said that they should have notified them, and then they chat among themselves, and yet they couldn't give us a definite answer. Did you inspect? No. This is a dangerous work. 3 people died as a result. And what about your procedures? If you think it's a dangerous work, you should have inspected the site more. And now that have been caused, and even now you can't tell me for sure whether you had carried out inspection. What can you say to the families of the dead workers? You know that it's dangerous. So within your procedures, according to your procedures, you said that you will review them, no problem. But at this moment, this very moment, how many more sites in Hong Kong are having hand duct tunneling? And shouldn't you have carried out comprehensive inspections? Have you done that? Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman. As I said just then, from what we know now, there are about 10 hand duct tunneling projects underway. As I just said, in the coming week, we will inspect all these similar projects. And also, before that, we will ask the contractors concerned to carry out or to renew their risk assessment. Chairman, I urge that you, in the future, whenever there is any application, you must carry out inspection. Look at your figures. You have carried out 636 confined space works, and there are 183 warnings, 9 suspension, and 24 prosecutions. And so 27% of the projects are problematic. That is, every 4 inspections, 1 turned out to have problems. So I'd like to ask you, the entire Labour Department, are there any ordinances out there that would expect 1 out of 4 inspections to create problems? And you only issued 9 notices of suspensions. The number of suspensions is too small. If you think that there's a problem, then you should have stopped the work instead of just issuing written notices of warnings to them and putting the workers' life at risk. Chairman, why did you stop me after 5 minutes? We should get the Labour Department to answer. Okay, Labour Department, please. I will let them answer. But Commissioner, what you just mentioned, you said that such work does not need to apply, but only notify you. But they only need to notify you. How did you know that they're carrying out this sort of project? Because you had no idea what exactly the project was and how can you carry inspection. And they said that for small-scale work, there's no need for notification. So small projects, however, could be even more dangerous. Commissioner, for the inspection, I will ask the DC to comment. But as for of our 600-odd inspections, there are 130 written warnings. Is the ratio too high? When we issue a warning, of course, that means we have detected some problems. But the problems that we've detected, whether they are very serious in nature, and also compared to the inspection at industrial projects by Labour Department every year, which actually number 130,000 in total. And of all our written warnings, there were actually 30,000 in total. among all the inspections. So proportionally speaking, I can't say that the warnings concerning confined spaces is particularly high. I personally, of course, am not responsible for inspection, but I did go to the sites with my colleagues a few times and look at the law enforcement and what are the areas that are not satisfactory at construction sites. So every time we did find out some areas where our guidelines are not strictly adhered to, and that's why we issue written warnings. But I'll ask DC to comment on our inspections. Okay, please be brief. Oh, Assistant Director. Okay, once we have received the applications from the contractors, we'll carry out inspections for small-scale projects, say in the contract which covers various job sites. We would just do random sampling of the inspection. But based on our records, we find that the site where the latest accident happened, let me say that our colleagues had not been there to do inspection. That's where the problem is, because you only expect them to notify you, and yet you only had random inspections, so you didn't really check all the sites. They haven't answered me for all the hand duct tunneling projects, any such project that you know. Can you have comprehensive inspection, not just for the latest 10, but in the future until you have new guidelines in place? Would you inspect all hand duct tunneling projects, regardless of the size? Well, as I said, when we have the new guidelines, we will not encourage such sort of tunneling at all. When would that happen? I hope that within the year we can have the new guideline put in place. Even before the guideline is launched, as I said, we have had meetings with the sector, and the sector has pledged to redo a risk assessment for projects that are already underway, and for other projects or similar tunneling projects that are being planned, they would review what sort of method should be used is the best option. We ask them to try to the best of their ability, to have piping put in using machinery or by opening a space on the road. So once the guideline is in place, if there is to be a hand duct tunneling projects, I don't expect there to be many of them anyway. So can we inspect every single project in the future? I think that is feasible. For large projects, it's fine because the contractors can use machineries, but we are talking about small projects where they will require hand duct tunneling. Well, do you understand that? Well, there's still projects being done today and the day after, and if you ask them to do a risk assessment, under the law, however, they would need to get the assessment done first before beginning the work. And yet accidents occurred, and that's why members have asked you to inspect all the projects first before waiting for the guidelines to be put in place. As I said, there are 10 such projects, and within the coming week, regardless of the size, we all will inspect all of them. But will there be other projects that you are not aware of because they may not have notified you? Okay, well, I think we need to be very precise. Next one is Ann Chiang. Thank you, Chairman. There was another meeting next door. Yeah, please be concise because of time. Because at 4 p.m. we need to start the next item. There's still 3 members in the queue. So I hope that you can really be quick. Chairman, the Hong Kong accident in which 3 workers died because of the confined space work is really tragic, very sad. You know, particularly since the 3 workers were young, and they had children, small children. So I was thinking, what really happened? I know investigation is still underway. You haven't had a report yet, right? So it's not appropriate for us to talk too much about the case. But because of what happened, I thought about, say, accidents on escalators. I don't know whether escalators, for maintenance of escalators, I don't know where the work is done the work done is considered to be in confined space. Maybe. But we have seen accidents in that kind of work, and lately I received quite a number of complaints against companies. Okay, the law requires that there must be 2 workers inspecting escalators, but often it turns out that there's only 1 person just carrying out routine inspection and then sign their name after the work is done. So, do we need to have a more serious review of the situation? Say, escalator or elevator maintenance. Would you expect or request both workers to put down their names after finishing the work? And also I heard from Mr. Tam about, having more and more inspections. Let me ask you this directly. I know you've done many inspections and issue warnings, even suspension notices, and you have prosecuted 31 cases over the past 3 years. But are there any successful prosecutions of all the cases? Any success at all? Really how about the penalties concerned? Commissioner, for the 31 cases of prosecutions, convictions, there are 19 convictions. Highest penalty was $80,000. So how about the law? When was the law actually enacted concerning, the regulation on work in confined spaces? When was it enacted? Well, based on what's written in the law, it should be 1999. The last amendment was made in 1999. Well, given what happened, the tragedy, resulting in 3 deaths, I hope that the authorities can, in your report, can really seriously study the law. It's time to amend it. I can also see that there are people criticizing confined spaced work. It's so difficult to work in such small spaces, and yet it seems that you just need to have a 1-day training and then you'll be qualified to do that kind of work. Is the training enough? And I've also heard that whoever who work in the confined spaces, they never wear safety devices. Is that right? Is that the case? It's really dangerous because if they pass out, nobody knows. So how can we resolve these problems? I think maybe it's time, particularly after the accident, the occurrence of the major accident, we need to revisit the law. Okay, Commissioner? As I said, the new guidelines to be launched will besides spelling out the conditions under which hand duct tunneling should be done, we will encourage really through the guidelines other forms of method. And also, should workers have to resort to hand duct tunneling, we would remind them of the safety precautions. As for now that you say many workers seem not to have put on safety devices, I think the current legal requirement is, according to the current guidelines, whether the worker needs to wear a safety belt or a breathing apparatus. It all depends on the outcome of the risk assessment. If the risk assessment is such that, and also with all the tests done in advance, suggests that there should not be any emission of poisonous gas, then the workers do not need to bring in with them breathing apparatus. If the risk assessment shows that there may not be a need for safety rope to be tied to the body of the worker, then that could be spared. So the risk assessment has to be done to make sure that in case of an accident, how workers could be evacuated, and there could be a need to have safety seatbelts and the breathing apparatus on standby at the site. Okay, next one for Zhang. We're very sad to see that only 8 days ago, 3 workers died while working in confined spaces. The 3 workers include Mr. Sham Chang-wing, 23 years old, Fok Kam Chow, and Ng Kin Ming. 3 families. When I went to Queen Elizabeth Hospital and saw their family members, the sudden loss of their loved ones. And these men were also the breadwinners for their families. And then the next day, I accompanied them the whole day almost to meet with CLP and the other contractor to discuss the compensation. I was really sad to see what happened. Yesterday, there was a press conference by the Association for the Rights of Industrial Accident Victims, and they said that the hand duct tunneling work could be eliminated, indeed, according to the association. And just then the commissioner was saying there are 10 such projects underway. Maybe you can't give me a definite answer. Jeremy Tam asked you whether you had inspected all of them and said you... I think you may not even know how many underground piping work is being done now. The workers told us that there are 50, 60 projects in the way. About 20 of them are hand duct, usually hand duct approach. Maybe you're right, we're not experts. But if the Labor Department does not know really what's going on, and 8 days after the accident at electrical meeting today, and if the Labor Department still don't seem to be knowing what's happening, then it seems like you're really being sloppy in your work. Look at the 3 families of the victims. They told us about the workers, the 3 workers going to the confined spaces. They were not wearing safety seat belts. And the family members said that when they were down there, they found some actually there's no breathing support for them when they were exposed to poisonous gas. And for a long time, the hand duct tunnel were very wet. There was water down there, and when they returned home, the family members recalled they were always wet. And because of limited time, and the need to rush, the workers were asked to actually release themselves inside the tunnel. It's really unbelievable to me, but it's because of the limited time the workers had to finish the work. Not just one or two family members, but 2 families told me about the working condition that the workers were in. Did the Labor Department know about this? And Commissioner just then said they didn't encourage hand duct tunneling. You say they didn't encourage it, but that's not protected by the law. Because of the need to save costs, companies would prefer having the hand duct approach. And also at turns, what they need may not be machines, but they need to close some parts of the road surfaces. So we knew that hand duct methods is so unsafe, and machinery work could avoid the loss of lives. Why is it that you haven't really considered banning the hand duct approach? Have you thought about legislating to ban hand duct tunneling? Or can you have more thorough inspections telling us how many hand duct piping work is currently underway or going to happen across Hong Kong? Commissioner, as far as I know, there are 10 hand duct tunneling projects now underway. And as I just said, what's most common, in terms of piping work, is most common for the contractor to really do the piping by opening up spaces on the road. There's 47 of them actually being done, and a few of them are using machines to bore the hole. But so I've given you the figures. I just said also, we will in the future continue to discuss with the contractor how we can have or enhance the guidelines to be launched, say to cover, for example, if the piping passes a turn or has to be done around some obstacles, then underground, then which make it difficult to use machines, then we can have open dredging as an alternative instead of relying on the hand dug approach. In some situations, because of traffic arrangements or the nuisance to nearby residents, this method is not used.
Whether we can overcome the difficulties of using machines, we will discuss with the stakeholders. Now, I don't know whether the use of machine is feasible. I don't know, but even if for that small section we use hand dug tunneling works, we can still greatly reduce the risk, and we will discuss with the sector. My question was whether there is any intention to amend the legislation that is to ban hand dug tunneling, and will there be enhancement in guidelines and safety measures, and when are you going to amend the legislation? Deputy Commissioner. We rely on our legislation for enforcement, and we also use our guidelines as a supplement. Usually the court would make reference to guidelines issued by the Labor Department in making a judgment. According to experience, the court would consider the requirements laid down by the Labor Department in our guidelines. When can you amend the guidelines? As I said, we expect to do so within this year. Mr. Shiu Ka-chun, thank you, Chairman. We have these rendezvous feeling. Last time we were here to discuss industrial accidents involving in the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge. Today we talk about the accident in Hong Kong. The difference is last time Ms. Lau Xiaolai, our former legislator, was very agitated and upset, and today is Mr. Jeremy Tam. And as usual, the Commissioner responds to our question with a very sad face. And then every time the Commissioner will talk about enforcement and guidelines and enforcement, the more fluent or eloquent the Commissioner is, the sadder the whole thing is. Now, if you truly have so many risk assessments and guidelines, such accidents would not have happened at all. And Dr. Fernando John talked about lack of safety harness, so on and so forth. We know that such accidents may not be altogether avoidable, but what upsets us is the LD appears to be rather weak. It is not very serious in tackling this matter. It's already 8 days since the incident, and still you are not able to tell us how many similar works you have. You said it might be 10, but is it really 10 or 20? Can you be more definitive? I thank you for checking on these projects in the coming few days. I hope you can ensure that no works can proceed pending completion of your inspection. And I don't understand why you insist that guidelines alone are enough. You may say that a court give consideration to your guidelines, but shouldn't the court give more weight to the law? Now, if guidelines can replace laws, then things can be much simpler. But this is the Legislative Council. In this accident, lives have been lost. So why can't you amend the legislation? Even Chiang Lai-wan asked, how come the law enacted in 1999 cannot be reviewed now? Why can't you improve our legislation to ensure that such accidents will not happen in Hong Kong again? I don't really expect them to answer my questions. I just want them to understand. Every time we see your face, it's likely that it's because of another accident. It's because of innocent lives lost. So I don't really want the Commissioner to come back next year because of another incident. I hope he will be here to report to us the various amendments and reviews. Mr. Kok Wai Kang, I think we are discussing this matter with a heavy heart. When it comes to training, I don't think this accident has got anything to do with training. I think it's all because of the mentality of the parties concerned. We've said to the administration many times that when lives are at risk, the risk assessment must be watertight. You should not say that when there is no rainstorm, then the underground will not be flooded. But this is exactly the case. Even a 0.1% risk should be avoided, because once an incident happens, it can be fatal. It's not just the families that are affected. Their colleagues, their friends are all affected. And I think this is very telling, revealing about the work or the inadequacy on the part of the LD. We are not trying to be clever with the benefit of hindsight. We just want to say that the LD must enhance its awareness of danger. You cannot say that when the risk is low, we can do less because of manpower constraint. No, this is not acceptable. We must make it watertight. For workers working in confined spaces, the length cannot be too long, and that is there must be an opening within a very short distance, because if the length is as long as a few tens of meters, then it's difficult for evacuation and for rescue. It may add to the cost of the contractor, but it must be considered. And I hope that we will not just have this short paragraph on a review after the accident. Commissioner. Yes, we have touched on this in our discussion with the sector. We are concerned about this as well. So in our future guidelines, we will require that a risk assessment will take into account the need to provide 1 or 2 extra openings if the length underground is substantial for evacuation, for rescue, etc. All right, no further questions, and we move on to Mr. Michael Look. Thank you. The incident happened on the 10th of July in Hong Kong, and 3 lives were claimed. This year, we have seen many similar accidents, and even though we are not family members of the victims, we are saddened because we are such a modern international city. How come our death rate in industrial accidents has been so high? I think different parties cannot shirk their responsibilities. In particular, the Labor Department and the contractors must shoulder their responsibility. Contractors may have safety guidelines, but what matters is how you enforce the guidelines. For instance, in this accident, people asked how come there was no sensor to test for poisonous gas, and how come the safety guidelines have not been strictly followed. And safety guidelines very often is just a checklist. The foreman or the team leader may just tick the boxes in a checklist. How useful is the checklist in ensuring the safety of workers, or is it just a formality in order to have documentary proof? And for the punishment of these contractors, we have talked about this in a number of previous meetings. The industrial and factories and industrial undertaking ordinance has been too lenient to contractors when it comes to fines and jail sentences. For instance, for these large enterprises like the China Light and Power, is safety an overriding consideration in approving a contract? The government should make safety an overriding factor in awarding contracts so that its importance should even be above that of the project cost. Commissioner. We've been saying to contractors, public utilities companies and government departments that they must attach more importance to safety than project costs. Because for a big company like CLP, the project cost of making a tunnel is really peanuts when it comes to their other costs. So CLP was very positive when we required them to take safety as their paramount consideration. So we really hope that there won't be any hand-dug tunneling works in the future. Well, for other alternatives, it will mainly be an open trench method, and this may have serious disruptions to traffic and other road users. But if the community agrees that protecting lives is the most important thing, then I hope that future works in this manner will have the understanding of the public, and we will try to use machines as far as possible. I think we have overrun by 15 minutes. Dr. Fernando Jiang, you have another question. 1 minute, please. The Commissioner met together with the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, met the CLP senior management yesterday. Now, CLP has already lost 4 lives in this year. I'd like to know what CLP has to improve safety, not just for tunneling works, but for ordinary works. What measures do they have to improve safety? Now we have two. The CLP has got 2 accidents this year in the gas or the coal residue tank. The investigation report contains improvement suggestions. I understand that my colleague is examining their papers, and CLP is not allowed to restart work in that site without our prior approval, or without our, or if we do not find the recommendations satisfactory. Now, for this work or for this contract, my understanding with the senior management of CLP was every day they had their engineer or their own people stationed on site on a daily basis. Whether there can be further communications in case of future works, yes, there is always room for further improvement. So when the accident happened, there were engineering staff from the CLP present. Whether there were engineering staff at the point of accident, we didn't know, but according to CLP, they have engineering staff present on a daily basis. All right, we will end this item here and we move on to the next item. Please invite the deputations and also the administration representatives to come in.
First
of all, welcome deputations and individuals to our panel meeting to discuss statutory maternity leave. We would also like to thank the Secretary for attending the panel meeting for the first time. The reason why we have this item on the agenda is because our Research Services Division did a survey or a study on statutory maternity leave arrangements in other jurisdictions. We have identified 8 places, 4 in Asia and 4 in Europe, respectively. And our conclusion is, in Hong Kong, we've only got 10 weeks of paid maternity leave and is on the short side compared with other jurisdictions. And the employees are only given 4/4 of 4/5 of their wages, and this is also on the low side, and therefore a review is warranted, and therefore we have invited deputations and individuals to come so that the secretary can understand the employees' aspirations for improvement in maternity leave arrangements. Since this is your first visit to the panel, Secretary, would you like to say a few words first? Chairman, I'm here this afternoon to listen to the views of deputations on this matter. And as you said, Chairman, the information is objective and clear to all as regards how we can deal with this matter. I am all ears to deputations. All right, without further ado, I'll give the floor to deputations. Now you have an earpiece and also a microphone in front of the desk. On the desk, Channel 0 is the floor, Channel 1 Cantonese, Channel 2 English, and Channel 3 Putonghua.
Your remarks made at the meeting will not be covered and protected by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. You will have to take responsibility for your remarks. If you have a written submission, and if it has not been given to us, you can give a copy to our staff after the meeting, and it will be made available to members for reference. And then there is this notice for people attending meetings in the council and for people in the public gallery. Please take a look. This is for your reference. Now, let us start to invite deputations to speak. The first one, from the Civic Party, Mr. Hong Ling Fai. Thank you, Chairman. I'm Hong Ling Fai from the Civic Party. I'm a man, but I understand that pregnant women face a lot of difficulties at work. It is a family-friendly policy to provide them with a good working environment. It will protect the health of the pregnant woman and the fetus, and it also lessens the pressure on the whole family. The ILO sets the maternity leave to be 14 weeks in 2000, but in Hong Kong, we only have 10 weeks maternity leave. Now, in order for us to align with the ILO stipulation, the administration should do something. In 2012, the mainland says that there should be 14 weeks ML. And if you look at the entire world, well, let us look at Asia. 58% of the places give 12 to 13 weeks and 19% 14 weeks and over. Only 15% of the places in the world give ML for less than 12 weeks, and unfortunately, Hong Kong is one such places. For pregnant women, they need to hand over their work before ML, and then after she gives birth, she needs to take care of the newborn. Newborn babies rely a lot on their mothers, and new mothers also take a long time to recuperate. If there is a long enough ML, breastfeeding will be encouraged, and this will ensure the health of the baby in future. I understand people object to lengthening the ML because it will add to their operating cost. It will be a burden for SMEs. But in 2014, a report of the ILO states that the actual cost for SMEs arising out of ML is lower than expected. And an effective ML will reduce the number of sick days for women after they come back to work. So women have to recuperate, they have to take care of newborns, and they need family support. There are only 3 days paternity leave, and it is not satisfactory. Paid paternity leave should be extended to 7 days with full pay so they can take care of the women in the family. We don't have a high birth rate. According to the CNSD, from 2012 it was 12.8%, and it is only 8.3% in 2016. If ML and PL are extended, there will not be a sudden surge of the birth rate, but rather there will be more protection for new mothers. The CP would like to extend the ML to 12 weeks and paternity leave to at least 5 days with full pay. And then the 14 weeks of ILO should be the standard. Thank you. The statutory ML relates to the entire family. And in fact, we have many men amongst the deputations today. I think this is right because it is a family issue. Next, Mr. Chu from DP, Democratic Party. Thank you. I'm Chu Chi-lok from the Democratic Party. We have the following views. As the CP said, in 2000, Notice 183 of the ILO states that the ML should be 14 weeks. And then in 2014, it is said that out of 185 members, 98 countries provide at least 14 weeks ML. In 2014, the CEDAW committee scrutinized Hong Kong's report, and the conclusions 61 and 62 state concerns about Hong Kong's ML, saying that it is not in line with the ILO standard. The DP has been asking the administration what it will do in LegCo. It just says it will take note of Hong Kong's economic development and whether there is widespread knowledge in every sector in society, and that the administration has no plan to start a review. I'm the father of a newborn. My little girl was born last month, and I'm very clear about the importance of ML to a new mother. You are promoting a breastfeeding friendly atmosphere, but then there is no complement for the mother to really breastfeed her baby. All breastfeeding mothers know that if you don't feed the baby at regular times, the mother will feel uncomfortable because milk accumulates, and then after a while, if the milk is not used, it will be reabsorbed, and in the end there will be no milk for the baby. Just like my wife, she teaches in a kindergarten, and she cannot pump milk at regular intervals. So very often, new mothers can only breastfeed their babies during the ML. Therefore, we like to extend the ML. ML is a family-friendly employment policy. As the chairman said, Hong Kong lags behind the 8 places researched by the Library and Services Division. We should review it so we don't lag behind. This will also benefit a balance for working women. You should review the existing ML arrangement, and there are people already saying that you should promote family-friendly policies more, so women workers have more time to take care of newborns. Hong Kong is one of the 10 most affluent places in the world, but we lag behind 98 places or countries. This is disproportional, and this has led to a low birth rate in Hong Kong. I hope with the new secretary here, a new administration, I hope there can be some concrete improvement to the ML arrangement. Next, Mr. Lam Shiu Pan, please. Thank you. I'm Lam Shiu Pan. We are discussing this livelihood issue of statutory ML, but democracy and livelihood cannot be separated. Mr. C.K. Law, you were a Pan-Democrat. You should know this very well. Last Friday, 4 legislators were disqualified. All 4 were members of this Manpower panel. In other words, we have 4 fewer members working for the benefit of women, for workers, and for grassroots. You have disqualified 6 members, and you are depriving the interests of 180,000 people who voted for them. And we must stand up and speak our mind here. And I will take this platform to speak on statutory ML. The Secretariat of LegCo has issued a research report. I've read it And then I cannot but ask this question. Actually, the Hong Kong government did not treat Hong Kong people, but only as pigs. Because if you look at statutory ML, it is 70 days or 10 weeks. There has been no amendment after 1995. And as was said, the ILO stated in 2000 the protection of birth giving convention, and it says the ML should be 14 weeks. And then in 2014, the ILO issued a research report. It looked into 185 places or countries and their ML arrangement. 53% of countries give more than 14 weeks ML. 32% give 12 to 13 weeks ML. And the remaining 15% provide fewer than 12 weeks. In other words, Hong Kong belongs to the 15% which lag behind. This is quite sad. It is an employment issue, all right, but ML is about respect for people, respect for women, respect for family. You always say you want to encourage birth giving. In the platform of Carrie Lam, however, there is no mention whatsoever about reviewing ML or PL. It's silent. And in fact, Hong Kong's birth rate is ranked 206 amidst the world. It is a very low one. If you really want to encourage birth giving, you should immediately increase ML. Next, Hong Kong Catering Industry Association, Mr. Tam Siu Sing. Thank you, Chairman, members. We don't have a lot to say about the ML stipulation in the Employment Ordinance. Each woman will get 10 weeks. It is affecting our operation. We have to get a replacement worker. That would add to our operating pressure and cost. Therefore, we don't think there is any room to extend the ML. Also, we have to pay 4/5 of the wages. It is already quite a lot for SMEs, but we believe this is fair because at least we don't have to pay full pay. Trade unions always say they are the victims, but actually employers also have a hard time. Many employers say after the maternity leave, the employees will resign upon coming back, and then the employers continue to work hard. Business is not good nowadays. It's more difficult to be an employer than an employee. Employees will certainly be paid, but employers may not have their pay given to them. Trade union workers also say we should follow civil service benefits. But think about this. SMEs may not be able to afford it. The government has public money to pay for its expenses, so it's a powerful employer. And the average enterprise cannot compare with the government. Please listen to the industry. Don't add to our operating burden. Society should not label the less able employers. Don't stifle their survival by legislation. Next, Mr. Ng Long Fei from Liberal Party. I think the ML is quite enough. I have 3 children. I remember 7 years ago, my wife gave birth and she was working at that time. She breastfed the baby, and I asked her for how long, and she said it can be up to 2 years. And then I was thinking, if the ML is extended to such a long time, it will affect the enterprises. And in the end, I decided that my wife should not work anymore, and I would support the family. Well, there is no end to people's desires. I also work in my capacity of approving loans for SMEs. Well, we all want more benefits, just like the SMW. It went up from $20 to $30. Who would eventually suffer? The employers would have to check up prices, like a fast food lunch will fetch $50 to $60, so nobody benefits. The guiding principle should be, it doesn't really help the woman if you extend ML by 1 week or 2 weeks. But the government should plow in more resources to allow newborn babies to be taken care of after the ML is over. I engaged a foreign domestic helper, but other people may want nurseries. In Hong Kong, there are not many full-day nurseries. The government should spend more money on this side, and I think it would be better. I approve bank loans for SMEs, and SMEs are in a very difficult position now. The bad debt rate is so high, like the amount is $50 million, and then at 5 to 8% are bad debts. In other words, SMEs are having a very difficult time. I hope the government will not just victimize SMEs. Maybe pan-democrats don't mind. They may want half a year ML, but you must look at the entire society. I don't want SMEs to have to lay off people, because it would mean women are going to lose their work. I hope the government will put more resources into solving the problem and don't even try to dip more into the pocket of SMEs. Thank you. Next, Hong Kong Federation of Restaurants and Related Trades Limited. Mr. Lam Kok Leung. Thank you, Chairman. We don't think there is any room to extend ML. As you know, the catering industry is operating with a lot of difficulty. For workers who are continuously employed, they already get 10 weeks ML. And also, they need to go to doctors before and after. And if there is a certificate from the doctor, we still have to pay them 4/5 of the wages. And if the delivery date is later than expected, we still have to keep the job for them. Actually, the catering industry is suffering from a shortage of manpower. When the woman is on ML, we need to engage a part-time as replacement. A part-time is now more expensive than a full-time worker. The global economy is turning bad, and Hong Kong's catering industry is facing so much difficulty. High rental, wages, raw materials, and there is a drop in the number of tourists from the mainland. And Hong Kong's consumption power is also dropping. Customers are not spending as much. So the legislation is also affecting us. Say, for example, the solid municipal waste levy, the SMW, the standard working hours, and the abolition of the offsetting mechanism for MPF. Well, just now it was said that there would not be a lot of impact on SMEs, but no, SMEs in the catering industry are not making a profit. Therefore, you will see the closing of eateries ever so often. Even employers ourselves don't get paid when we pay our employees. You may say 1 week or 2 weeks is not a lot, but it affects us really a lot. We would have a much bigger burden. Our association, or federation actually, wouldn't like the administration to adjust the ML in any way. Thank you, Ms. Zhang Chet-Yi. Thank you. There is appropriate protection for pregnant women. Ever since 1970, the EO provides ML, and then in 1981, it starts to provide ML for workers who are continuously employed for 40 weeks. And it also states that employers should not ask pregnant women to handle heavy work or in places where gas injurious to pregnancy is generated, and they may be fined $100,000 if they contravene the law. The present EO also states that pregnant employees should be adequately protected. The administration should look at the overall economy and the situation for different sectors. When the Hong Kong economy is having undercurrents and there is also an impact from SMW, SMEs are already operating with difficulty. Now there is the SMW and then standard working hours as well as offsetting of the abolition of the offsetting mechanism. So it is already very difficult. The administration is not providing enough childcare and nursery. You should do this so working women don't have to worry too much. There should be more daycare work and support for community organizations.
And there should be mutual help nursery services, and that neighbors could be helped. There should be nursery vouchers to provide subsidy for families. There should also be more daycare centers for kindergarten students, so that children under age 12 can also be provided with subsidy for caring for them. In recent years, child abuse cases have been frequently heard. Quite a number of women are worried about Filipino maids abusing the children. Therefore, some women have chosen to quit their jobs to focus on taking care of the families, and that leads to an exodus of female labor. So there should be a demerit system brought in for domestic helpers, and there should be actually 3 months probationary period for domestic helpers, Filipino maids, and also to actually make sure that there is penalty for helpers that abuse their children, children being cared for by them, so that family members and parents can focus and work without worries. We should have a better plan and to create a better environment for people, and then that can encourage people and couples to give birth. Thank you. Next one is Ms. Nika Yan from the Youth Committee of Liberal Party. I was listening to the deputations. I found that many mentioned the International Labour Organization's Convention on Protection for Maternity. I've looked at some relevant information, and I found that the convention, besides covering the number of maternity leave, a number of days involved, it also talks about the source of financial support. If you just look at the days as maternity protection, that's unfair to employers, because in Hong Kong, most paid maternity leave are solely borne by employers. Indeed, before an employee became pregnant, I think 100% of them would not tell their boss about that. And only when the woman became pregnant would the employer have to shoulder the costs. So I think we need to actually try to be fairer to employers. Under the 3 proposals made by the International Labour Organization, we can have more careful consideration for where the cash come from for the maternity leave. And we have compared Hong Kong with other countries, and we found that in other countries, the governments there would act actually or play an important role to help employers pay for the maternity leave. And indeed, after the cash has been paid by the employers, the government would offer them rebates. And the government would also set up some sort of social security system that allow for contributions from various parties, because it's the mothers and the couple's responsibility, and also society's responsibility, besides the employers, to support couples that are having children. So we need to set up a central fund, so that the employees' contribution can have a way to make contributions to support maternity leave. Only then can we be have a fairer system for employers and employees. I personally have a 2-year-old child. So far, I'm still breastfeeding my child. I'm also working. My biggest worry as a working mom is not about the number of days under maternity leave, but in the long run, how we should nurture our child. What if I have a 1-year maternity leave? A year later, I still have to find someone to look after my kid. So what I'm worried most is whether my carer is trustworthy. Based on the government statistics, in Hong Kong, there are only 27 nursery centers providing 27,100 places. Among them, only 16 of them provide nursery service for toddlers. That means that actually they make up less than 2% of the children. That is, 99% of the moms would have to look after their own children. So that actually will be a huge source of burden to them. I think the government should do more and educate enterprises and the society as a whole, provide a family-friendly working environment that can provide long-term help for the mothers. In May this year, in a chat room for women's groups, we actually circulated a remark made by an Australian lawmaker who spoke on the issue of breastfeeding. And we had heated debate and discussions on this topic of breastfeeding. So can the same thing happen in Hong Kong? I don't think so. So I hope that, the government itself should provide a proper civic education so that enterprises are encouraged to provide family-friendly environment so as to help the working moms in Hong Kong in the long run. Next one is the Ms. Leung Chong Yan from the Women's Committee under the Federation of Trade Unions. Good afternoon. Many have just mentioned that the paternity leave legislation was set up in 1970. It's been 47 years where the 10-week maternity leave has been offered. As a woman, well, in 40 years, I would have 3 generations of children. So look at us. The wage level set was 2/3 back then, and from 1995 then till now, and now the wage level has been raised to 4/5. I think this is really backward. It's really high time the law was amended. Maternity leave, if it's not sufficient, many women will suffer depression, and the mothers themselves would stop breastfeeding at an early stage, and the newly born babies would not be properly cared for. So therefore, if you want to develop close family bonding, those factors would be unfavorable in nature. For the FTU has always been advocating family-friendly employment policy. All along, we've asked the government to extend the statutory maternity leave to 14 weeks. In April, we actually talked to Professor Chan Xiu-Yi, chairman of a relevant body, and we heard that more than 80% of mothers before they gave birth wanted to breastfeed, but after they gave birth, 80% continued with the breastfeeding, but about 3 to 4 months later, the figures dropped to 20%. You can see because of the lack of maternity leave, the short maternity leave, moms were not encouraged to continue breastfeeding. Therefore, we support the ILO's provision that women should be given maternity leave not less than 14 weeks. And all along, we've insisted that the government should amend the wages for maternity leave. It's a woman's natural duty to give birth. So therefore, we should not deprive of our right. And yet, government statistics show that the median wage for women the monthly income is $13,000. With the maternity leave, each organization will have to pay 20% more, that is $2,600 more, or $6,500 more for 10 weeks. The $6,500, how big is it to various organizations? What impact would it have? I hope that you can encourage a family-friendly policy to support longer maternity leave and to have a 7-day paternity leave. 3-day paternity leave has been in place for 2 years, and the government promised that it will review the policy. I hope that you can support a constant or further review of the paternity leave policy. Thank you. Next one is concern group under Liberal Party, Mr. Ho Wang. I have 2 children, and my mom is also working. Hong Kong laws provide that Hong Kong women can enjoy a 10-week maternity leave. If a employee, because of pregnancy, suffers health issues, then the employer should give her an extra 4 weeks holiday. Resting should be enough, for in a 10 weeks period. Because my wife told me that at the later stage of her leave, she became bored. So it's outdated to think that employers are actually against employees, even though. Well, actually in Hong Kong now, employees have much bargaining power. Many enterprises are giving the employees benefits way beyond what is required by law. I know the situation differs from industry to industry, but you can't have a across-the-board approach. The labor sector got it wrong, by saying that moms need 1 to 2 more weeks of paternity leave, but rather that a child after he's born, he needs the care of the family. For a newborn child, if he's properly cared for, and so that the mother can work properly without worries, that'll be good. In Hong Kong, most working mothers, after they've given birth, the child is either cared for by an elderly family member at home. As you can recall from an old Chinese saying, that is an elderly person, an old person at home is very precious. But not every family has elderly family members. The second option is to hire a domestic helper. But there are problems associated with domestic helpers caring for babies. I myself experienced that. If I wanted to hire an experienced domestic helper and ask her to look after a newly born child, 99% of the chances that you couldn't hire such a helper. You can only have at your disposal helpers who have not been to Hong Kong, have very little work experience, and the intermediary company, I think almost 100% gave you fake information about the helper. Last time, an intermediary company told me that the helper was 27 years old, and I found out when she arrived at my home, she was 17, 18. I asked her why. She said she used her sister's passport. The agent got the same money from us, but then the agent got away with it. So in the end, we had to hire another helper. So it's like buying lottery, Mark 6. I tried to get the help of daytime nursery center, but it's so difficult because in Hong Kong there are just hundreds of places in daytime nursery center. But fortunately, my wife's firm allowed her to go on unpaid leave, so that solves our problem for the short term. So if you want to have proper care for a newborn child, then you need to provide for enough nursery service. The government is so rich. Our party previously asked that there should be community-based or estate-based nursery service, or we can have a mutual aid group to provide such service. Let me supplement. Our statutory maternity leave is 10 weeks. There's no 4 weeks before pregnant. There's no provision for 4 weeks before giving birth. Okay, next one, please. Mr. Lau, Chairman. Labor unions have made various requests, and now they are asking for extension of maternity leave. The catering industry is very disappointed with it. Let me say this again. Hong Kong's business environment is very much not like before. Operating costs have skyrocketed, and with the economic downturn, many SME restaurants are struggling. Our association thinks that the existing law in Hong Kong provides adequate protection for pregnant staff already, and it has struck a balance between the interests of employers and employees. And the law has also catered for the affordability of employers, so there's no need to change existing law. Our association always encourages resourceful employers to provide more rights and benefits for the staff so as to improve the competitiveness of the company. But how about the less resourceful companies? You should not actually just put yourself on high moral ground and criticize the small employers to increase their operating costs and squeeze them out of the market. Thank you. Next one is Mr. Lai Ming Chak. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm a psycho district councillor. I serve in the Zhang Kun O New Town. It's a lively town where many young couples have moved in, so family-friendly policy is their concern. I myself and the New Democratic Alliance thinks that the 3-day paternity leave, well, compared to the massive need for pregnant women, you can consider that husbands should really do more to look after a newborn child. If a father is not around, if you have to rely on the mother to look after a child, it will be very tough for the mother concerned. And not every family can rely on their own parents to look after the kid. And most employees don't have an annual leave of more than 20 days. And many workers only enjoy basic protection under the Employment Ordinance, so it's difficult for them to take leave or ask for further leave to look after the child. Therefore, we urge the government legislate to increase paternity leave to at least 5 days. Civil service already have a 5-day paternity leave already, like many other countries in Hong Kong. In UK, paternity leave is 2 weeks long. So we think that maternity leave needs to be extended to 14 weeks as well to offer better protection for women. As I said, before giving birth, a woman needs to be properly cared for, so they need to be better protected. Whether it's paternity leave or maternity leave, employees only enjoy an average 4/5 of their age during the leave. I hope that the government can raise it to full pay, so that the family concerned will be under less financial burden and there can be a more family-friendly working environment. Just 10 representatives from the business sector said that we should have more nursery centers and subsidy for nurturing children. I think nobody would object to those suggestions, but what this is about is there will be an increase in government's recurrent expenditure. That means the government needs to raise the taxes to increase revenue. So I don't know of all the suggestions suggested by the business sector, would they also agree with the government increasing its income to pay for the extra expenditure? I think Logicon may be very happy. If you increase tax, then you can have more revenue. But then on minimum wage or statutory working hours or municipal solid waste, 0.11 per cubic ton, and which is controversial. So with all these potential expenditures, and I wonder whether the government can really accept the proposal. But at least I think we should increase paternity leave to 5 days and also restore the wage for women on maternity leave to full pay, and also give them 14-week maternity leave so that we can provide more support for family with newborn baby. That would be very meaningful for society. Thank you. Next one is Mr. Jenny Bay of Pathfinders.
I represent Pathfinders, a Hong Kong charity. From inception in 2007 to date, we have helped over 4,600 babies and their migrant mothers. The majority of the mothers are current or former migrant domestic workers. A large proportion of Pathfinder's work would not be necessary if there were some clear guidelines that existed explaining to everyone involved how to best manage the pregnancy and maternity leave of a foreign domestic worker alongside the so-called live-in rule. I will explain with a case story. Farah is from Indonesia. She has worked in Hong Kong for 9 years, the last 4 with the same employer. She shares a 2-bedroom apartment of approximately 400 square feet with the employer, the employer's brother, and their parents. Farah has just started her 10-week statutory maternity leave. She is allowed to leave the employer's residence at 7:30 a.m. each day and must be back by 8:30 p.m. After the birth, the baby will live with its father in Cam Tin. The live-in rule brings considerable difficulties to the employer. The flat is small, it is inconvenient for him and his family to have Farah in the house while she is not working and needs to rest. At the night, the only place for Farah to sleep is in the living room where the employer's father also sleeps. During the day, the only place available for Farah to rest is on the sofa in the living room, leaving nowhere for the employer's elderly parents to sit. Besides, a part-time helper has been hired to cover Farah's maternity leave, further crowding the apartment. The live-in rule brings considerable difficulties to Farah and her baby. Farah is forced to live in a crowded apartment before she gives birth, are risks to health of both mother and baby. After giving birth, Farah will have to travel every day from her employer's home in Tai Wai to Cam Tin, a journey of about 3 hours, to see, bond with, and feed her baby. This commute will be difficult, costly, and tiring, especially for Farah, who will be exhausted and still recovering from childbirth. Farah will not be able to breastfeed her baby in the evening and at night. We will make 4 headline recommendations today, all of which are addressed in detail in our written submission. Number 1, relax the live-in rule during statutory maternity leave and specifically explain how employers and employees are lawfully, humanely, and in the infant's best interests should manage the live-in rule during statutory maternity leave. Number 2, extend Hong Kong statutory maternity leave period to 14 weeks. Number 3, devise detailed and practical policy and practical guidelines stipulating how lawfully to manage the pregnancy and the statutory maternity leave of foreign domestic workers. And number 4, add a specific line to the foreign domestic workers' standard employment contract stating that pregnant foreign domestic workers are entitled by law to maternity and non-discrimination protections. Thank you.
Thank you. 下一位係港九勞工社團聯會。
Next, Ms. Zhang from the Hong Kong Kowloon and NT Federation of Workers' Union. Thank you. For the last 20 years, after making the paid of maternity leave to 4/5, there's been no change, and so we have not catch up with times. And then suggested by ILO that there should at least be 14 weeks of maternity leave. And in 2020, it's found that 53% of 185 places have got 14 days of maternity leave. 30% gave 12 to 13 weeks of maternity leave. Only 15% of the places offer less than 12 weeks of maternity leave, among which is Hong Kong. In Singapore, there is 16 weeks of full pay, 60 maternity leave, and South Korea 90 days of full pay sick maternity leave. So Hong Kong is worse off when it comes to the duration and the amount of pay of ML. And then for breastfeeding, we must consider the psychological aspects of mother, because in between March and April, we did a survey on breastfeeding by working mothers. 96% of the mums indicated that a longer period of ML could enhance their desire to breastfeed their babies, because after giving birth, new mothers need a lot of time to adapt to this new lifestyle and to take good rest before starting work. Otherwise, they would stop breastfeeding, and this would not be conducive to breastfeeding of babies. So we strongly ask for ML to be extended to 14 weeks of full pay, and I hope the administration can consider our suggestions. And please follow the practice of other places so that ML and PL can be calculated together. Thank you. We have Mr. Choi Man Wai from the Institution of Dining Art. Thank you. We agree that there should be ML, paid ML for female workers. Under the Employment Ordinance, female employees entitled to 10 weeks of paid ML at 4/5 of their ordinary rate, and I believe most employers are for this. This has been in place for more than 22 years, and we've already heard of any family incidents because of this arrangement. Now labor unions are asking for longer ML. Yes, this will be a positive for new mothers and babies, but for SMEs and employers there will be negative impacts. In particular, micro enterprises will be hard hit because of the weak performance in the catering industry. Some countries have longer ML than Hong Kong, but their calculation basis is lower than what we have in Hong Kong. And in some places, employers are not solely responsible for the cost of ML. The government or insurers are parties to the payment, and therefore we agree that there should be extra ML for employees, but it should not be done by statutory means because SMEs will face a very heavy burden as a result. Thank you. New People's Party, Ms. Wong Ching-chi. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Wong Ching-chi from New People's Party. Hong Kong is is one of the lowest places with fertility places, and we women face a lot of concerns. Families are building blocks of society. The government has the responsibility to help employees to balance work and life, work and families, and there should be family-friendly policies. We've only got ML and PL, but what about providing short breaks for facilitating breastfeeding in workplaces, and flexible working hours are not common. So family-friendly policy is just a lip service, and we haven't had any review of our statutory ML arrangement for 22 years. So we are very backward in this regard. This is the opportunity for improving the situation. We should see how we can have truly family-friendly policies to enhance employees' quality of life and to improve fertility rate in Hong Kong. For the 10 weeks of ML, only people who have been continuously employed for 40 weeks can benefit. In other Asian countries, the threshold is much lower. Some women like to go for jobs with greater flexibility in workplaces and also working hours. However, they may not be regarded as employees on continuous contract. We have many such employees, and if they're not working 18 hours for 4 weeks continuously, they're not entitled to paid ML. So if you want more women to join the workforce, you can consider adjusting the requirement for continuous contract, and also to adjust the calculation of employment benefits so that employees that are not on continuous contract can also be protected. In addition to statutory ML, the government should also provide sufficient support for new mothers. Unfortunately, an associate lecturer took his life, possibly because of postpartum depression. In fact, many new mothers are rather depressed and are emotionally unstable. We should improve our healthcare services to give them sufficient physical and mental support. Thank you. Ms. Chen Kapoi, South District Councillor. Good afternoon. Women are more important in the roles they play in society. If a woman is required to give up her job because of her giving birth, I think this is a lose-lose situation for herself and also her employer. However, there are still traditional thinking that men should be breadwinners and women should be homemakers. So even though and a couple is both working, society expects the mother to go home and look after her children, and we encourage breastfeeding nowadays. As heard from some speakers today, some mothers had to stop breastfeeding after their ML was over. I am a bit lucky. I work in the district council and I can use the office of the DC chairman to pump breast milk. So I was fortunate to nurse my baby for 6 months. But the ML arrangement has not been reviewed for so many years, and it should really be reviewed at this stage. Of course, I heard from the catering industry their difficulties they face in operation, and the business environment is indeed bad. But if the employers and employees cannot come to a consensus, then there is no way we can find a solution. If the employers and the government can do a little bit more in ensuring family-friendly policies, I think we can achieve a win-win situation. Employers may consider offering staggered working hours for their employees, because human resources is the most important asset of a company. Now, if you're a good employer, the wastage rate would be very much lower. I understand that the operating environment is difficult, but you should not just consider profits and operating costs. You should also consider the needs of your employees. If you are kind to your employees, they tend to be more committed to your company and will not leave so easily. If they're allowed to work staggered hours, then family conflicts can be avoided and productivity enhanced. While it is women's duty, so to speak, to raise children, the government, the society should support them. The employers told us their difficulties. Perhaps the government can provide some resources or provide them some tax concessions. If a company has staff members taking ML, perhaps the government can give them more support so that we can boost fertility in society. Chairman, please consider our recommendations. Thank you. CTU, Ms. Mwai Ling. Thank you. Good afternoon. Well, we have 4 more empty chairs in the Manpower panel. This is very saddening. There are only 4 members here listening to our views. I don't know whether our views will be sufficiently dealt with because of this. I am from the Women's Committee of CTU. We are very concerned about the welfare of women and also the rights of homemakers. Now, we are talking about ML, so please focus on the needs of ML. I heard about comments of childcare services and so on and so forth. Please do not digress. Let's focus on ML. I think we have lagged behind international developments. I don't want to repeat what's already said by other deputations. The international standard is 14 weeks of full pay ML, whereas in Hong Kong, we've only got 10 weeks of ML with 4/5 of the normal wage. Hong Kong is such a developed economy, and yet we have this phenomenon. I think we should all reflect on the cause and why we are so mean to our new mothers. Now I'd like to talk about contract workers. While an employee cannot be sacked during her ML, this protection will not be extended to her after the ML. So CTU has received a lot of complaints. Many pregnant women did not get their contract renewed. It may seem that there is protection for pregnant women. They cannot be sacked while they're pregnant. In fact, the protection is not extended to people employed on contract terms because of the state of the economy. Many employees are contract workers. So please see how the interests of pregnant contract workers can be protected. And casual workers, if they do not comply with the 18 hours, 4 weeks requirement, they are not protected. We've received complaints against a theme park. The job roster is such that the employee is not protected. And we want the duration of PL to be extended because new mother really needs the support of her spouse. So our demand is there should be 14 weeks of paid ML and at least 7 days of PL and 7 days of casual leave to deal with family emergencies. And even contract and casual workers should be protected in terms of ML arrangement. And we should have family-friendly measures implemented in Hong Kong. Thank you. Ms. Wu Shui-shan from the Labour Party. Thank you, Chairman. The Labour Party supports 14 weeks of paid full pay ML, and I will not labor on this point anymore, given that many speakers have commented on this. However, there is a speaker today who told us that his wife did not need 14 weeks of ML, or he was rich enough so that his wife could stay home to look after the family. This is a very disappointing because the ILO requires this. And I think that speaker is using his experience to say no to some already recognized standards. I think this is a very poor standard of policy discussion. And I don't know why many employers in the catering industry would like to exaggerate the difficulties posed by ML to their operation. I want the administration to do a survey how many Hong Kong-style cafes have ceased operation because their cashiers have got pregnant. Please do a survey to confirm whether ML is such a big challenge for our employers, so that you can respond or address the concerns of employers. So please do a survey of Hong Kong-style cafes that have folded up because of pregnant cashier. In fact, rent is a big problem to the catering industry. Why don't you talk about the need for rent control? I think their hidden agenda is to minimize what they have to provide for their employees. I agree that we should consider the operating costs of enterprises, but ILO says that 14 weeks of ML is the minimum, and therefore we should see how we can improve the benefits for our employees. And if we want the employment benefits to be raised to better than the minimum, then let's see whether any tripartite contribution can be considered. It's okay for the government to be involved, but please first honor your very basic obligations before you talk about the rest. And in Article 2 of the Labor Convention, it says that the benefits apply to all forms of employment, including female employees employed on contract terms and casual workers and part-time workers. So far, there is no discussion yet on how to extend protection of ML to such employees. And I think the government really have to consider these aspects. Thank you very much. 19 deputations and individuals for giving us their views. I'd like to know whether the Secretary has any responses to these speakers. All right, a few members have raised their hands, and I read out the order. 郭偉強、潘少平、Helena Wong and Michael Look。
郭偉強啦，咁我哋每人4分鐘，連問連答，好嘛？
係，多謝主席。首先呢，就好多團體呢，多謝大家嚟先啦。咁好多團體呢都有提過，就話國際勞工組織嘅建議呢嘅產假係講緊10。
Many of you mentioned the ILO's proposal of ML for 14 weeks, but Hong Kong offers 10 weeks only. Frankly speaking, no matter how many times you talk to the administration about this, my feeling is that the administration just doesn't mind that we lag behind the world trend or the ILO requirement. It doesn't mind at all. I was a member of the Labour constituency also last time. We said that many times, and then the administration remained unmoved. A business rep continued to use SMEs as a front. I'd like to mention some figures. There are about 3.9 million people working, and half of that is women, meaning 1.9 million. The birth rate is about 50 to 60,000 a year, or 3%. When you employ 100 women, there will just be 3 who will be pregnant every year. And at the TID, SMEs are companies which are non-manufacturing and which employ 50 people or fewer. In other words, every year there will just be 1.5 of your staff members who will give birth, but they don't do so year after year. If this year 2 members of your staff get pregnant, they won't get pregnant again next year. Therefore, you say there will be a lot of impact on SMEs. I think it doesn't work anymore. Please, don't resort to that argument anymore. Rather, the businesses should rather say, we agree that ML should be improved, but we have already taken up part of the responsibility. We hope the administration will underwrite the extra leave. Then you will get the support of the labor sector. It all boils down to the attitude of the administration. The administration has got this clear stance that we need to preserve our competitiveness and we need to protect the SMEs. But as I said, figure-wise, there won't be a lot of impact on SMEs. And I don't want you to compare with others. Let me just say this to the administration. What do you think Hong Kong should do? Where should we stand? When you say the birth rate is low, you want to encourage it. Did you do anything to encourage it? Did you take even a small step? You also say you want to formulate family-friendly working environment. Improving the ML is one way to do it, but you won't. And then there is experience in other places that the administration also chips in. In your paper, you say there should be a consensus between employers and employees. Well, no. You can provide the insurance or provide a tax break. You can play a part. You just shouldn't waste more time to forge a consensus. If you want to encourage fertility, if you want to be friendly to the family, then do something. Your excuses are not realistic anymore. Please do not beat about the bush. Do something good, quick. Secretary, what position do you take? Chairman, I'm here to listen to views. I'm here to listen to views from different quarters. I have an open mind on this issue. But as I said at the beginning, objectively speaking, you know that there is a gap between the Hong Kong situation and many other places in the world, but as to how it can be resolved, I'd like to listen to you. I heard about social insurance. I heard about the government doing our part. I will go back and consider these views. Next, Mr. Poon Shuping and then Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the deputations for coming. Frankly speaking, employers and employees always stand on opposite sides when it comes to this issue. Just now, the chairman asked the secretary what he proposes to say. He says he is here to listen to views. Secretary, you say you have an open mind. In 1981, and that is 36 years ago, now and then 1995, there was a change from 2/3 of a monthly salary to 4/5. That was 22 years ago. And then you say, we have to be mindful about the economy, and employers and employees' interests must be balanced. I think what boils down is the attitude of the government. In the year 2000, I was at the conference of the ILO myself, and we actually had wanted or had hoped that the administration would follow the ILO requirement, but you haven't done anything for 10 odd years. Singapore is offering 16 weeks. I'd like the administration to respond to a few questions. Number one, it has been decades. And what has our economy been like? Have you done any research? Secondly, have you done any research into operating expenses? You have to convince the labor sector that we shouldn't raise this anymore. In para 8 of the paper, you say you have done a lot to encourage good people management, that people should provide better benefits than those in the EO. But when employees face ML and PL, have you got any information whether some employees are receiving more favorable terms than those in the EO? As you know, in the UK, they are considering a mixed kind of leave. I hope you will consider it. That is conducive to both parents taking care of their children together, and this is also family friendly. But anyway, I think really the most important stakeholder is the government. Apart from having an open mind, I hope you will come back with specific measures. Secretary, are you here just to listen? Mr. Poon said something was done in 1995. Now, of course, the GDP has grown by 60% from 1995, and the economy is, of course, very different. But you asked us how we could do better, especially the ML and care for the women after pregnancy leave. I hope you will also think about the specifics. But in fact, I don't have the information at hand. Say, for example, in Hong Kong society, how many employers, if at all, are giving better terms than those stipulated in the EO? We don't have such statistics, and it may take time for us to seek some understanding into the issue. Dr. Helena Wong, and then Michael Look. Chairman, the Secretariat has been digging up information for us on ML and PL. The DP has been working for many years on ML and PL. We say there should be 14 weeks ML and 7 days PL. And that there should be full pay for both kinds of leave. Let us take a look at history. As some guests have mentioned, the ordinance was passed in 1970. It has been 47 years. There has not been a review. And as to whether the ML should be extended, in 1995 there was a review, and it is said that the wages to be counted will increase from 2/3 to 4/5. At that time, the CTU was asking for full pay, but the businesses' representatives blocked it, and in the end it was a compromise, and it was 12 years ago that we decided on 4/5 of wages. I think this is the time for us to review ML and PL and whether they should be lengthened. If you look at our own research, we will know that Hong Kong is very backward. We have looked at 185 places. 53%, meaning 98 places, are giving 14 weeks or above. 32%, meaning 60 places, provide 12 to 13 weeks. And only 15%, or 27 places, that provide fewer than 12 weeks. And in Hong Kong, only a meager 10 weeks. And that has been so for 47 years. We have accumulated so much wealth, and our economy is in such a shape that the DP doesn't think we are not in a position to extend the ML. And we are talking about extending it by 4 weeks. Is it that it is too big a burden for the Hong Kong society? The administration should think about this. There is aging of the population. People are unwilling to get married. Even they live together, they don't want to give birth. And the labor force will just shrink. If businesses always say they don't have manpower, then if people don't give birth, there will be no people working. Therefore, we should not be so short-sighted. Do we have a big enough labor force? Is there incentive for people to give birth? Now, of course, it doesn't only depend on the ML. There must be other factors as well, like nursery, housing. My own proposal is that the Secretariat, the government should hasten to study into extending the ML. But as to who should pay the extra money, well, we can look at it. In 2008, Singapore extended ML from 112 days. No, in 2008, it extended the ML to 112 days or 16 weeks. The salary would be paid by the employer first, but the administration would be happy to reimburse 8 weeks of wages. And this covers the first 2 children of a family. So we want to see whether we can extend it by 4 weeks. And who should pay the salary of those 4 weeks? Well, we can look into that. Whether it can be compensated by a tax break on profits tax, or should it be topped up by the administration? Or if it is the first child or first 2 children, can we cap the salary that needs to be paid? I think there is so much room for improvement. Dr. Helena Wong have put forward some concrete proposals. She hopes the administration will look into it. I hope after the summer recess, you can come back and let us know your research results so we can tap progress. Mr. Michael Look, and then Tommy Zhang. Thank you, Chair. How can we have sustainable development in society? One of the important ways to do it is to have future generations. Women are really to be admired because they take up the responsibility of giving birth so we can allow our generations to continue. So I thank the deputations, especially those who support extending the ML and paying full pay during ML. Carrie Lam is the first female CE. She was pregnant. She gave birth. So she should be the CE who knows best the needs of women. The FTU proposes to have full pay ML of 14 weeks and 7 days of PL. We are also concerned about women returning to work and the fact that they may not adapt well, and maybe in the short while she might not be able to take up all the duties she has before pregnancy. Would there be casual dismissal of such women? And that would be a lot of pressure on these women, and they may suffer from depression. The FTU would like to propose that there should be an employment protection period of half a year. If employers dismiss women who return from ML, it should be regarded as unreasonable dismissal. It's the same as how you treat pregnant women, because the process of giving birth starts with pregnancy and then giving birth, and then there should be a period of rest, and the woman has to adapt to it gradually. And it is not that the woman would get back totally in shape once she has given birth, because she might have to feed the baby at night and her energy might not go back to the original level. I believe there should be legal protection for the right to work of new mothers, so they are more willing to give birth. And as part of our population policy, this should be considered by government. Next, Tommy Zhang. Chairman, I will be quick. First, I'd like to thank the deputations and individuals for coming. My friends are in the catering industry, and we are attacked on all sides. Today here I'm surrounded by labor union representatives, including the chairman. I don't know whether I alone can ward off all your voices, but I'd like to talk to the union reps. You don't have to be too worried. The Liberal Party and my constituents, I would like to be frank with you whether you like it or not, and I don't mind you slashing out at me. Well, I'm used to criticisms. Of course, the minority is always bullied by the majority. I'm used to it. Talking about ML, no matter, are you talking about ML or PL? ML. No matter for how long it has remained the same, you look at ILO, we always want to compare ourselves with overseas countries. PL is offered for as long as a year in some countries. Why don't you go there to work? That is why Hong Kong is not competitive. You want to give more PL? Today you ask for 7 days, next time you ask for a month. And then later on you ask for 4 months, and then you would go for a year. And then you might want it for your whole life. It's easy to be a union rep because you can always ask for more. Look at the SMEs and micro enterprises. You talk about abolishing the offsetting of MPF with LSP and SP. Now you are trying to abolish everything and you want to ask for more. You want full pay instead of 4/5 of wages. You say 10 weeks is not long enough. You want a few more months. You always ask for more. And I always tell union reps, why don't you be employers? Some of them are employers. And at their social enterprises, they don't do what they preach. At social enterprises, why don't you give over 10 weeks ML and 2-3 months PL? Do it, because there would not be as many as 2 every year. The FTU reps, since you engage so many people at the FTU, even the CTU, please do that for your own employees. Show me that it is so good to be so benevolent to your employees, and productivity rises and the SEs would be making profits, and only the foolish ones who operate SMEs are sustaining losses. Well, do it and demonstrate it. I don't mind. Show me one successful example and I will follow suit. If you can't do it, don't ask me to do it. So, be fair. Be fair. I don't mind. You try to secure more. The DP is always saying they want more. I don't mind. I can go for GC election and I can propose $60 an hour, and also standard working hours, etc.
So, 4.5-day work week, 52. Where in Norway, well, 10 years ago, they only work about like 30 hours. Okay, well, thank you, Tommy John. Let me tell you, in our organization, we have maternity leave of 16 weeks and paternity leave of 2 weeks. We also have 1 day menstruation leave. If a female employee wants it, she can get it. I don't know whether you will follow our example. We are not a social enterprise, but just a community organization. I'm asking the social enterprises to try to run a profitable business. Show it to me and how you can make profits and offer all sorts of benefits. I can learn from them. We don't have to learn from us. I can ask our electrical members 36 months of salaries. It's not my money. Well, just then you said, well, you mentioned the name of my organization. I just wanted to tell you what we're offering at the organization. I'm not talking about people in your office. I'm saying that if you want to run an enterprise, if your enterprise just follows closely the ideal and yet can make a lot of money, I will learn from you. Well, we do run courses. In our organization, we do run courses. As I said, we have a 16-week maternity leave, 2-week paternity leave, and also menstruation leave. But anyway, I'm not trying to fight with you. I just want to say that we respect staff rights and benefits. I know that the Secretary today would not respond further because you're mainly here to listen to views. So I don't think we should keep talking. Many deputations have expressed their views already, and they've made similar points. I don't want to repeat them, but I do hope that in the next legislative term, you can really, as soon as possible, tell us the result of your study and tell us how you're going to follow up on the issue. So today's is the last meeting of the Manpower panel in the current term. I'd like to thank friends, officials, and member colleagues for supporting today's meeting. And also thank you, members, colleagues, for your hard work over the past year. I'd like to thank all of you. I'll see you after the summer recess. I hope that the administration can give us more positive opinions to actually push forward the work of the Manpower panel. Thank you.